What's up, Buttercup? Welcome back to my channel. Today's book series and discussion is all about the Hunger Games Trilogy by Suzanne Collins. Most people who know me well are aware I love the Hunger Games books and the movies. I read the trilogy in 2012 before I ever had a booktube channel. I was going through a lot of difficult things during that time period. I needed a distraction, so I picked up the trilogy. This is the same box set that I got in 2012. Actually, it's holding up very well. It's simple yet very sturdy. Love to see that. And I picked these up in particular because a fellow student in a Latin class that I was taking at community college suggested the trilogy because she was obsessed, and I just loved her enthusiasm, and I was obviously intrigued. And not only was I entertained by the young adult dystopian trilogy that is the Hunger Games, I was fascinated, absolutely fascinated. The Hunger Games trilogy has a special place in my heart because, yes, the books are pretty damn depressing, but it's absolutely complex, moving, disappointing in some ways, but like in a good way. We'll get to, some examples later. Sad, uplifting, hopeless, hopeful. It's just a bunch of adjectives. And I swear, once this trilogy hits 20 years old, it will become known as classic literature because, as I'll get to later in the video, it can be read by anyone due to the fact that it is a universal story. So an obvious 5-star trilogy. After I just gushed all about it, I won't go too deep into summaries because I think at this point everyone knows about the Hunger Games and the overall story. If not, maybe come back to this video after you've read the books or have done an overview of the story, because that's not what this particular video essay is all about. Instead, I want to talk about what interests me the most about this trilogy and why I think these books will become classics. But just in case you need a refresher, I'm going to read the first book's summary, and then we're going to jump into the details. May the odds be ever in your favor. Winning means fame and fortune. Losing means certain death. The Hunger Games have begun. Love that intro. In the ruins of a place once known as North America lies the nation of Pan Am, a shining capital surrounded by 12 outlying districts. The capital keeps the districts in line by forcing them all to send one boy and one girl between the ages of 12 and 18 to participate in the annual Hunger Games, a fight to the death on live TV. 16-year-old Katniss Everdeen regards it as a death sentence when she steps forward to take her sister's place in the games. But Katniss has been close to dead before, and survival for her is second nature. Still, if she is to win, she will have to start making choices that weigh survival against humanity and life against love. The biggest thing that stood out to me when I was reading this for the first time was that I absolutely admire Katniss Everdeen's reluctance of being the chosen one throughout the series and how that reluctance shapes the 3 books. There are a few things Katniss does willingly and even glad to be the chosen one, like the hunter who feeds her family, though that comes with risks. Everything in this book comes with risks. But she famously volunteers as a tribute in place of her sister, which starts up the reluctance because she is portrayed as a hero and then eventually the face of the rebellion, and that's not what she wanted, but she wants to save people. Katniss is technically not the leader of the rebellion. She is a young girl that is forced to be the face of this rebellion. And I think a lot of people don't understand that even when there is a just cause, there's a lot of propaganda behind that just cause, and we can see this clearly within the Hunger Games trilogy, which is just so fascinating. And it's true, and people don't like that, but you see that whole concept play out throughout this book series, but especially in Mockingjay. Like I said, she didn't want to be the face, though she accepted it. All she wanted was to save her sister because she had no chance. But Katniss, with her hunting and archery skills, kind of sort of had a chance, even up against the couriers. She also didn't intend to be the face of the love conquers all trope, and not really a trope, but like a love story, as you would say, with Peeta at the end of book 1, where they both refuse to play by the lame rules of the capital and would rather die together as friends than harm one another. But by being herself, and Peeta by being his self, his charming self, I should say, and also strategic, a little more strategic than Katniss, as we get to see throughout the trilogy. People fell in love with her and the couple, so much so that President Snow knew he had to let them both live or else a riot would break out. It has been stated that he was planning to use Katniss specifically, but Peeta as well, and them as a couple, to keep Panem together as he saw fit. But yeah, that didn't work out. Sorry, Snow. Katniss did not plan out that ending in the first book. She was being herself, and often when you have someone so authentic, people place a lot of responsibility, assumptions, good or bad, love, expectations, etc. on that person. This is huge throughout the Hunger Games trilogy regarding Katniss. There are dozens of examples of this, like Katniss agreeing to officially be the face of the revolution, but it's to help others. And when she doesn't agree on a certain method, she has to be talked into it, which is the reluctance part, or she does what she wants for good or for worse. And you can see that when she, instead of killing Snow, she kills Coin. And well, you know, Snow eventually gets ripped apart, but Katniss can see what Coin truly is by the end of this series, and her choice to kill Coin, not well liked, and that wasn't part of the plan that everyone else was telling her to do, but she decided, actually, I see this woman for who she truly is, and she's going to rip everything apart and basically become another Snow, and I can't have that. After everything that I have done, I cannot do that to Panem and the people that sacrificed their lives. Katniss does ultimately do the right thing, whether we agree as a reader or even the characters around her agree or not that she's doing the right thing. And she knows she must live with those consequences because, like I just mentioned, she killed Coin in front of thousands of people, and everyone was expecting her to kill Snow. And she was ready to die. In the book and in that movie, you could see that she was like, I am probably going to be assassinated next, but this is what needed to be done. And though this sucks, I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to die. Of course, she didn't, because I think a number of people realized what was happening with Coin trying to basically become Snow. And so things worked out. They didn't agree with it beforehand, but then when they thought about it, they were like, oh, okay, yeah, she did the right thing. We didn't realize. How could we not realize? Okay, never mind. We're just gonna go and do something else. Good for Katniss, okay? Good for Katniss. But yes, she's living with the consequences, good or bad, with every decision that she makes, and that does touch on morality and what that means. I love the ways that morality is spoken and written about in this trilogy because it's often not simple. It's nuanced and must be discussed. And people are not going to agree because everyone's morality is different. This is clearly seen in the final book where the remaining tributes are asked to vote on if the capital children should go through their own Hunger Games, and it's a tight vote, but ultimately it does not happen. You can, in one way or another, understand why a tribute would vote for such a thing, because after all, they went through the Hunger Games, they survived. They had to kill their fellow tributes, who are all children, 12 to 18, on live TV. And they will always go through those memories due to their trauma. But the tributes who voted no thought deeper. It's not a right of mine to vote for other people's death and suffering just because their parents were from the capital. If the agreement of all children are innocent and must be protected, that includes capital children as well. There is no exception. All children are innocent and must be protected, no matter their privilege or lack of privilege in Pan Am after the revolution is complete. There are so many more examples of morality and good versus bad, but that one still sticks out to me and I think about it a lot. It's a very powerful scene in the book and even in the movie, though I think the movie could have done a better job showcasing everyone's vote/reaction during this scene. I think it was cut down a little too much. And we also see Katniss's inner conflict in the book as well. And that is a huge theme and message and idea in the trilogy. Even good people can think bad thoughts and do bad things, but how and why do you get to that point? And also, just because you're thinking negatively or horrible thoughts, that does not mean that that defines you. It's your actions that define you, not your thoughts and not even your feelings. What do you do at the end of the day? What is your decision? Another amazing point of this trilogy is mental illness representation. I have PTSD, and the depiction of trauma and how long-lasting it is very accurate. And since everyone is their own individual with their own life experiences, their reactions and their symptoms and their own logical way of thinking, going about their decision making differs. And I really appreciate that. You also see the symptoms for many of the tributes and also just the soldiers during the rebellion. They have PTSD. They have very outright, glaring in your face symptoms, but they keep going because they know that they must. And they're choosing to continue on with this revolution for the betterment of everyone, and I think that does help out a bit. They're doing it for the greater good, and though they're going to be scarred for the rest of their life, they're not going to be the same person. They're still participating in this revolution. 2 points that I want to make: the grounding techniques that you see often with Peeta and Katniss, absolutely accurate. Those are actually used for people with PTSD. I've used that many times in the past. And the nightmares, that is absolutely accurate as well. I think that one is the most common. People know that when you have nightmares and you wake up sweating or even screaming because your brain is reliving those traumatic memories. And actually 3 points: the jumping, the screaming in fright if someone touches you, startles you, that's very accurate as well to PTSD. And those are the 3 main things that you see throughout the trilogy. I understand, to simplify it a little bit, especially because this did and is start out as young adult dystopian. We don't want to scare the children. We don't want to freak them out even more than they are already probably freaked out, because The content, very graphic, obviously. Now, do some people argue that there should be more representation of the symptoms of PTSD? Absolutely. Do I agree? I guess in some way, but I think that what is shown here is better to digest for people that don't know anything about trauma, because there was a lot of depth to trauma and the symptoms and how to treat it, that it could just take over the whole trilogy and kind of complicate it a little too much. But going back to the topic of morality and mental illness and their logical decisions, and everyone is their own person. I think that's really interesting that people didn't like the ending where Katniss is holding her and Peeta's child, and she basically states that after all these years and for the rest of her life, she's going to have issues and she's haunted by her memories. It's 100% realistic. There was just how many years of the Hunger Games, and then a very successful but also bad revolution that thousands of people died. And then the soldiers and the civilians in the capital and in the districts who didn't fight, they're still affected as well. Everything is different. Everything has changed. And that is traumatic. That's realistic. You're not the same person, and you will never be the same person. You're going to have to live with this trauma for the rest of your life. And if someone doesn't understand that concept, I'm gonna say, honestly, you are kind of showing your privilege. You can be healed and subclinical from your trauma, meaning you have little to no symptoms from PTSD. And you can live an overall happy life, but still acknowledge you will wake up in a sweat, screaming bloody murder because you just had another nightmare about you killing someone in the arena or on the battlefield, or you saw someone being killed and you couldn't do anything about it. So many scenarios. That doesn't leave you. It will not ever leave you. It can become less prevalent. It can be a scar, not an open wound, but the scar is still there. And it changes you in all the ways that you can imagine. And I think lots of people thankfully can only imagine, because the concept of a battle to the death where you legitimately kill fellow tributes that are ranging from 12 to 18, and then you go through a whole revolution where, yes, you win, but thousands die horribly and often in front of you. And a lot of the time, they're your loved ones. It's not a concept, let alone some sort of understanding, due to everything that happens in this trilogy to so many people. I'm surprised more people aren't messed up. But then again, in a series, this world is better at medicine and their technology, and that also includes psychologists. Their psychologists are better. And before anyone says, oh, you've been in combat? No, I haven't been in combat, okay. And no, I haven't killed anyone. But I have lived in very dangerous neighborhoods. I have family members and dear friends that did go to combat, that did go to war, and saw many atrocious things. And I also did not live in safe neighborhoods. People were hurt or killed fairly often. I saw violence all the time. No, that is not the same as a revolution. Completely understand that. But compared to people that have never gone into a fight before, let alone seen just a fist fight in the middle of the road, which I've seen hundreds of times, there's a difference between you don't have this lived experience of violence at all. You don't have any mental illness. You don't have PTSD. Versus, let's say, me who grew up around violence. I can understand the concept because I've seen it and I've been through it. And then also hearing from loved ones where, you know, Vietnam vets that were drafted, they had no choice. And what did they have to do? And now it's on their conscience for the rest of their life, and they're not the same. I think there is a huge difference between you have nothing going on and good for you, really good for you, versus the other situations where I understand. I can't 100% understand the combat situation, but I understand the change in you. I understand that you're not the same and you're haunted, because I'm haunted as well for different reasons. During this time, I was actually in trauma therapy, and it took 6 years. 6 years to fully recover and become subclinical for my PTSD and my other mental illnesses. It's a lot of work, a lot of work. And it was at first very hard to receive treatment. So that's why I say that, at least in the Hunger Games world in Pan Am, the accessibility is better than in the real world. I love the blend of psychology, history, symbolism, and mythology in this series. Of course, Suzanne Collins uses many Greek and Roman myths and legends and names. Of course, every name is very important in this trilogy. It's not just randomly picked. There's a point. First name, last name, nickname, everything makes a point in this trilogy. And with all of that, she has created Pan Am and a history after we're thinking a nuclear war, while taking cues from history like Nazi Germany, how to implement propaganda and how to use it successfully for the most part. There's also lots of psychology about controlling the masses physically and mentally and emotionally. And their advanced technology helps the capital out a lot. So many examples of that alone. You see it within the Hunger Games arenas that are just decked out with all the tech. You see the torture and how it breaks PETA, and it breaks Joanna in a way, but not on the same scale as PETA. But she's terrified of water, right? So the Capitol is extremely well versed in messing with your mind. I also like the concept that Suzanne might have been inspired by Joan of Arc regarding Katniss. Joan and her family were brutalized by a major power, which was England, and is thrust into the limelight, so to speak. Joan becomes the chosen one for the French army and leads it for the betterment of not just her family, but for the French. Though the Hunger Games does end way better than Joan of Arc, who was killed. But that whole concept about Katniss being inspired by Joan of Arc is speculation. Basically, you can give many examples of that kind of historical inspiration. So it doesn't necessarily need to be Joan of Arc. It can be dozens of men and women throughout the ages who have stood up to power and have fought back. And have they won or have they not won doesn't necessarily matter, because inspiration. We're not going for historical fiction here. This is young adult dystopian, and they happen from time to time throughout the world against horrible regimes. Sometimes the revolution is successful, and other times it's not. I think Suzanne Collins studied all the successful revolutions and focused on the concept of how to lead a successful revolution, but make it as teen-friendly as possible, kinda. Because obviously the concept of a certain number of district kids fighting to the death ain't that family friendly, but people fighting to the death as others watched on, not a new concept at all. Hello, Rome. What I also find so interesting about Suzanne's inspiration to write this series is a few specific concepts. One, the Greek myth of Theseus and the Minotaur, I probably said his name wrong, sorry, contrasted with her channel surfing between the news, reporting on actual war, and flipping through to another channel where a reality TV show was doing its reality TV showing of useless, silly drama. And how disturbing those two stark differences on television was to Suzanne Collins. Because there's a type of voyeuristic thrill going on, not just with reality TV shows, but actual war footage, and how, if done properly, you can merge the two where, like in the Hunger Games, you can eventually desensitize people to violence, and they don't understand the concept of propaganda because it's just their life. I'll link the articles in question down in the description box below where I just referenced her inspiration, because when an author shares their inspiration for their story and any sort of insight, you should be paying attention. Lastly, I love how straightforward the writing is, but it doesn't feel dumbed down or like Suzanne's talking down to the reader. No, it's accessible to nearly all reading groups. Parents, don't let your elementary school age child consume the books or the movies, but teenagers up to elders enjoy this series because I think through its young adult dystopian label, the story, characters, writing, and themes are universal, due largely to the fact that, yes, Suzanne Collins uses many popular young adult fiction tropes, but she subverts them, making them her own. This trilogy goes hard, and she doesn't treat her readers as silly, young, or dumb. There's a human being reading these books, and the writing style and the storytelling is so good. It's like we, the reader, are reading something real that happened in real time. If you can create believability, then you create connection, and that's what this series does so well. We love and hate these characters. We relate to many of these characters and therefore feel deeply when something happens to them. There is a deeper meaning to this trilogy, and it shows. Thank you so much for joining me today. Please comment with your thoughts on this series or just a particular book in this series, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.